chérie, chérie, le beau Paris.
Hello and welcome to Paris Set Me Free mini photo tutorials. This was taken during a very special 6-day personal tour that I did for Stephanie from Bristol, and we had a lot of fun shooting the Eiffel Tower this evening. It was freezing, but it didn't seem to matter. And this is one of the shots that I came away with. Let's have a look at some of the other shots that I had to choose between before choosing this one as the one I was going to highlight. Loads and loads of shots, as you can imagine. That's part of the fun, taking lots of different shots. Some of them pretty boring actually, and some of them a little bit more adventurous. Some of them just blurred, some of them quite literal. That was obviously taken without a tripod. There's the one that I chose, and Stephanie would testify that as I was taking these shots, when I took this one, when I saw the result, I shouted with delight at the way this had turned out. Then I started going really crazy and trying all sorts of different things, as she did too. And it's one of the marvellous aspects of this sort of shooting. You've got no idea what's going to happen. The subject's new. I hadn't really taken the stars on this side. I'd done other stuff of the Eiffel Tower, the blue Eiffel Tower from the other side without any stars, but this was another challenge, and there were some new results to be had. And the possibilities for creativity are endless. It's up to you. Do what you like. You can try something literal, or you can try something completely wild. And as you can see, I had lots of opportunities for crazy shots. These were done, as you might guess, with a slow shutter speed and moving the camera as I pressed the button. Moving it, wiggling it, turning it, zooming in and out, anything you like. The slow shutter speed can be set manually. Put it onto shutter speed priority and play around with between half a second and 2 seconds and see what happens. The thing is to make it enough of a blur that people say that's a really great effect, as opposed to saying it's a shame you couldn't hold it still, or it's a shame you didn't have a tripod. That's the thing. You see that one there, for example. If I saw this, I would say, why is it fuzzy? It's not fuzzy for an artistic reason. It's simply that you didn't have a tripod, and that's not excusable, really. This one, on the other hand, is excusable because you've done something. You can see the way these stars seem to be zooming out of the Eiffel Tower, which is a kind of impressionistic blur. That's fine, because I've tried to do something artistic. This one isn't fine, because it should have been something a little bit more like this, which is obviously sharp, taken with a tripod, and nice composition. I've got really low underneath the Eiffel Tower and tried to have lots of nice bits hitting the frame at various different parts there, you can see. So that's an example of, okay, it's a classic shot because it's sharp. It's not artistic in terms of blurriness, but it's kind of artistic in terms of the way I've composed the shot, trying to have different bits of it going out of each side of the frame or out of the corners. So there are all these different types of possibilities. I'll show you some other weird ones later, but let me just talk about the one that I actually chose. There it is. The Eiffel Tower, well, it's blue, and it has these stars on it, as I mentioned in another tutorial, because in this 6 months, the last 6 months of 2008, France held the presidency of the European Union, and the stars are the symbol of that. I decided, I honestly can't remember how I did it exactly. You need a certain length of shutter speed. In other words, it can't be, if you put it on your camera's automatic setting, it could be a bit of a disaster, because the camera tries its best to get things sharp, and it'll do it in whatever way it can manage it, but you don't have the control. So this is really a time when you have to get off the green button where the camera does everything, get off the P setting where the camera also does everything unless you tell it not to. Get onto aperture priority and especially shutter speed priority. It's a great reason for playing with shutter speed priority and choosing low shutter speeds in a situation where you don't have a choice anyway. It's night time, there isn't much light. So use that fact and play with it. You don't need to use a tripod because tripods will generally make everything sharp, and something about sharpness is tourist brochure stuff. It limits you because you can't play with the blur in the way you can when it's handheld. But as I said, it's a danger because the danger is it just looks blurred. So I thoroughly recommend you go out with a zoom lens, as long a zoom lens as possible, and try a few different techniques. Either zoom in as much as you can, and then as you click down on the shutter button, and you've set it to maybe a second, zoom out a little, start zooming out, click the shutter button, continue zooming out, and turn the camera at the same time. And what you'll find is, not only do you get a zooming effect, but you get a spiraling effect too. I honestly can't remember if I did it that way, or if I started by having the camera, the lens zoomed out on a wide angle, and then zooming in and turning the camera as well. I think it's probably the first, because if you start zoomed in, then as you zoom out, the blueness will get relatively smaller in the frame, and therefore won't get in the way of this blackness. Whereas if you start with zoomed out, so the Eiffel Tower is relatively small in the frame, and then you zoom in, you won't have this nice sharp edge here. It'll be much more of a mushiness. Here you can see this is the edge of the Eiffel Tower, and you see this blur here. That's the hint that there's a lot of movement there, but it hasn't got in the way at all of this blackness. This blackness is absolutely nice. This line is almost sharp, which is good, because you then think, and these lines here are also very sharp, and you almost think, hey, that's sharp, but these are moving. How did he do that? So you kind of there's a bit of trickery in a way, to make people wonder how you took the shot. And this zooming, it looks like the stars are actually zooming out towards you, but in fact what's happening is I took it zoomed in so that these stars, the bit where you see the stars as big, is actually when I was zoomed in, and by zooming out they've got relatively smaller and they've all gone towards the center. So it's not that the stars are zooming out, in fact they're zooming back in, as it were, as the shot is being taken. So when you've got a classically lit monument, especially something a bit wild like the Eiffel Tower, and especially when they've done something crazy to it, like lit it wonderfully and added these things, this is time to throw your camera around a bit and see what happens. As with all monuments, millions and millions and millions of shots are taken of it every year, and the challenge is to do something different with it that other people haven't done. And but having said that, there's a million ways to be creative. There's no limit to it. It's up to you. Walk around at all times of day, all types of weather, all types of lighting, and see your monument in all states of dress or undress, and work with the changing seasons, work with adding stuff like trees or other monuments. Like in an earlier picture I found the Statue of Liberty on a boat. There's no limit to it, in fact. The only limit is in your heads.
Depuis que je suis à Paris, le jour et la nuit, je suis gris. J'ai compris la douceur de vivre. Je suis fou de joie, je suis ivre. Depuis que je suis à Paris.